All right. As I promised, I'm going to come back and I'm going to go through the shell style guide from Google revision 2.02. This is something that I found kind of on accident today while I was looking for linter tools for um, for Bash, and that's largely because I have done that for Rust and Go and other languages where in VI, I can show you later, but when you exit, it automatically reformats the file, and I don't have to deal with having tabs not work or be in the right spot or any of that. And that's a big deal because I had a brief moment of complete insanity where I went back to 4-space indent because that's what Rust does. And then I realized I could just use the Rust 4 FMT tool and have it do the same thing that does for my Go. When Go, by the way, the Go standard is you choose tabs, so I would never actually type in the tabs. It's always better, just by the way, people, to always use some sort of FMT tool like Go FMT or Rust FMT, and just call it a day. Or a linter. Linters are another. Linters a little bit different. They don't always format the code. Sometimes they check it to make sure it's a thing. And when we go through here, there's actually a couple of discoveries that I've made while reading this about Bash specifically that I did not know. I've only been, just to be fair, I mean, I've been programming shell for a long time, but I've almost always been POSIX compliant because I was required to at IBM because, you know, stuff we don't know where it's running, and we didn't have the luxury of coding in Bash. So I actually allowed myself about a year ago to use Bashisms and see if they would displace my need for other favorites in that space, namely Python and Perl. And for the most part, Bash actually does. For most of the quick and dirty work I need to do, it displaces Python completely for that kind of work, other than like, you know, multiple system, you know, remote kind of stuff that you would use Capistrano or Fabric for. Python's still really good at that. And I did a lot of that automation while I was at IBM. Python still has a solid handle on that automation space and probably will forever. It's a real solid lead. However, when I'm talking about, you know, like using curl interfaces and stuff, I'm using Bash a lot more for that kind of thing. And if you stick with me after this video, I'm going to be doing a blog review of the weekend, and I'll talk about some more discoveries I made along the way, but it'll be a little bit redundant for this video. All right, so let's go through the style guide. Why do styles matter? Well, first of all, you always want, when you're doing any kind of coding in any language, you want to file the style of the people who are already before you. That is the standard. Whatever it is, doesn't matter if you agree or disagree, make sure you use whatever that is. That is the number one rule of coding styles. Always use the style that has, you know, been before. And since most of the time when you're dealing with code, you're not writing fresh greenfield code, you're maintaining code, please always do that. Don't change the formatting or style. I'm glad you said that. Anybody who has been in the business for any amount of time has had to deal with people who send pull requests or reformat a little section within a file or an entire file differently than the rest of the project. And there is nothing more annoying. There's nothing that'll get you hated by your team faster than screwing around with the style just because you want to in that one place. And by the way, if you do that with Python and you switch between tabs and spaces, so the whole project has used spaces instead of tabs, Python, of course, this allows you to use both. Not at the same time, though. So I have actually had somebody break code by putting tabs into their little Python update where there were spaces throughout the whole rest of the file, and it actually stops the code from working in the case of Python. So just be aware that styles are a thing, particularly in more serious programming realms, but also in shell scripting. In fact, this is the first time I've ever even heard of a shell scripting guideline that wasn't POSIX. And we're not going to talk about POSIX today. We're going to talk about Google's specific shell scripting guide. And I said shell instead of bash because the very first thing that they list on their needs is that bash, and I want to double emphasize this. I kind of want to pull this up in a way that's more readable than this, and I may actually go back to the terminal because you're going to find this is not going to be as readable as we go along. It's strange, but it's true. So Bash is the only shell scripting language permitted for executables. And I'm going to take a moment here to just give a little nudge to people who are trying to decide between Bash and Z shell. Bash, number one, Bash is the standard shell on all Linux systems. It is the Linux standard. This isn't somebody's idea. This is the Linux standard for the interactive shell by default. There's a few distros that don't do it. You can't count BSD and Unix in there. Those are different things. And you definitely can't count Apple. Apple has just changed their standard shell to Z shell because they don't want to comply with the GPL v3, and I don't blame them on that particular point. The GPL 3 seriously overreaches when it comes to hardware and the TBOization clause. I'll do another video on that. I've done lots of writing on that and changed my mind a lot on it, frankly. But it's very clear that GPL 3 is dead. V3 is dead, and it's going to kill GNU, in my opinion. All right, so Bash is the only shell scripting language permitted for executables. That's it. So that's why I put shell scripting and not Bash, because the first line item in their standard is everything's in Bash. Another one, this is another one of my pet peeves. I actually have a thing on this. If you go on RBXGG, you can go read about why using user bin env is bad advice for lots of reasons, beginning with security. Don't do it. Google agreed, and I'm so happy that they did. Use bin bash. People say, well, we'll work on somebody else's computer. Then change it. Change it. You should never not know where your shell interpreter is that's going to be running a script. If you install a script on a computer that does not know where the interpreter is, you're asking for trouble. That's my opinion. It's the opinion of Google. It's the opinion of lots and lots of other cybersecurity experts. Using user bin env is a bad practice. It is an anti-pattern, and there are many people who disagree with that, and almost all of them don't have any professional experience in the industry dealing with large deployments and secure deployments that have very strict requirements in place for that kind of thing, including IBM, where I worked for 10 years. So you just don't depend on user bin env for anything in a professional setting. Restricting all executable shell scripts to Bash gives us a consistent shell language that's installed on all our machines. All right, that's the reason I recommend it to everybody. That's the reason I recommend it's the only shell you use, because your memory and all of your other things you learn will apply across the board without question. Does that mean you don't write POSIX shellcode? That's not what I said. What I said is that, if you're going to stick with an interactive shell, use the default. The only exception here is when you are forced to by whatever you're coding for. One example, Solaris packages with plain Bourne shell. And I agree with this. And there's actually some other YouTubers that agree that when, progressive enhancement, you're going to hear me rail on this on the channel all the time. Progressive enhancement means use the minimum necessary technology that's available, and then as other functionality is available, add on to that, provided you need the extra functionality. And in this case, that means you'll see me use bin sh a lot. This is not part of the Google guidelines, but you'll see me use bin sh a lot because on Debian-based systems, bin sh is mapped is an alias for bin dash, which is the Debian Onquist shell, which is also much, much faster than Bash. It's much lighter weight, and that is the startup shell for Debian-based systems. Bash is, of course, a much heavier interactive shell that takes a lot of space, and that's why it's not included in smaller devices. And that's going to become an issue more and more. So I'm not saying. So please don't take my agreement with this policy here to mean that you should never use a shell besides a Bash, particularly for small things, because for IoT, you're more and more you're going to have to, because Bash is, unless you're extending Bash, it's going to be interesting to see how that works with the whole GPL v3 thing, because you're going to have, a lot of times you do need a shell of some kind on an IoT device to be able to connect to it. I think there's going to be a lot more remote procedure calls and stuff like that going on, and it's going to be less likely to have a shell even on those kinds of systems as we go forward. But that's really into the weeds there, and if you don't know what I mean, that's fine. So anyway, when we go down to the bottom here, it says when to use shell. Shell should be used, and this is an interesting section, and I largely agree with it. There's a couple parts though that I might diverge. Shell should be the only used for small utilities and simple wrapper scripts. All right. Yes, I agree generally with that. It's not. It says so. I'm going to actually read these words. While shell scripting isn't a developmental language. A development language, it is used for writing various utility scripts throughout Google. This style is more of a recognition than it is rather a suggestion to use them. Some guidelines, if you're calling out other utilities and doing relatively little data manipulation, shell is an acceptable choice for the task. Totally agree. Manipulation is the key there, not reading. So if you're reading and parsing data, that complicated data, say like JSON data or even YAML data or XML data, reading that data is much easier from the shell than manipulating it and rewriting it. If performance matters, use something other than shell, obviously. If you're writing a script that is more than 100 lines long, and this is where I kind of diverge, or that uses non-straightforward control flow logic, you should rewrite it in more structured language right now. What they're trying to say is if you think that what you're doing, if you think, we used to have a saying, don't make your hack too good, which means that you think you're just making a hack and pretty soon you got 3,000 lines in a shell script. And you're like, and it's being deployed into production. You're like, where did this go wrong? And you don't have a chance to pull back at that point. You're already committed, and they're not going to give you, like 2 months of runway to go rewrite this thing in Go or Ruby or Go, Ruby, Python, or whatever other language, Rust even. It's about a type of content. I agree. I don't like the number, and that's where I disagree. I think Mac. How do you unit test your bash scripts? I want to talk to you about that. There's a thing called BAT that Exorcism introduced me to, and we can talk about unit testing. Don't let me forget that viable before the end, and I can introduce you to a tool for that. But I did want to say. So I'm going to try to something. So I have like a script here that's 500 lines long, right? Well, obviously I disagree with that for a point, but this particular guideline does not cover something that I think is really important. And I'll just show you what I mean by that. The modern sort of idiom for dealing with complexity somewhat departs from the Unix philosophy of doing one thing well. And there's a couple of tools that fall into that space. So for example, Git, Git commit, Git push, Git this, right? It's not the only one though. There are a number of tools emerging that use the command subcommand approach. And so, and I actually am such a believer on this that I actually wrote a Go library called tab complete commander, a plug for that, which allows you to set up your own tab completion in your own Go code or any code, frankly. But it like embraces this idea of having a core tech, a core script, and then having multiple subcommands. So by that I mean this: when I type Twitch and I hit tab, I get all of the subcommands that are included within my kind of umbrella core command. And you saw that file was 544 lines long. If I were to divide up any one of those particular subcommands into a shell script using the true, hardcore, strict Unix philosophy, I would be well within that limitation of 100 lines. But I think that this guideline from Google doesn't take into account the emerging nature of, there's a bunch of them. Wow, that's a great list. It doesn't take into account this emerging approach of having one umbrella command that kind of keeps a bunch of functional subcommands together to allow for tab completion and stuff. It's more of a context than anything else. It's like, under this context, run these commands. If I were to break up all of those commands into separate individual files in shell scripting, I would go so far as to say, as in my design view, that would be irresponsible. That would be way too spread out. It also makes it impossible for me to do this. So I can give the studio audience a copy of that entire program and all of the subcommands that I may have added to it with one command. So there are modern reasons to keep everything in a file, even if it's a shell script, and that is one of them. You want to have kind of a portable way to contain all of your interactions with a particular thing. In this case, for example, the client ID tokens and things like that. Those are all read, and everything within all of those commands needs those things. If I were to attempt that by making them all individual scripts, I would have to be doing a lot of convoluted importing. This is what's really killing Python right now. Is there's still a heavy dependency on imported modules and things like that. And so then what? In order to distribute, if I had written this in Python and broken in all the color library out and everything, in order to share it, I'd either have to make a Docker container, or I'd have to make a Python virtual environment and figure out a way to tar that and share that. Or you can mail it as documentation as a doc. No, not recommended. And per you can use par. So there are tools out there that allow you to combine, so you have this one thing. But I believe that a lot of those tools are not necessarily the first thing I would reach for. How's it going? Because I would requirements txt virtual environment conda for environment. Yeah, it gets ugly. So I usually don't reach for those solutions until I have exhausted the possibilities with even a 500 lines script, as long as I have kind of kept everything in there. And just to give you an idea what I mean by that, it's like, so this is a pretty fun little thing here. So this I want to tell you, I completely happened on this last year on accident, this particular approach, because I was so tired of using a case statement. And so I'm assuming you have some bash knowledge at this point, just forgive me if you don't, but imagine all of those commands as a case statement. It was a big, long, drawn out case statement I didn't really need. And so what I did is I embedded a bunch of subcommands and scripts inside of my other command. And thanks to the magic of bash, which is not anywhere else, I was able to actually loop through this array. This is a completion going on here. And if the subcommand exists, now that this is not quoted, strictly speaking, I probably should quote that. I'll do that just to not get yelled at. But I know what all of the things are. I know that there's nothing that needs to be quoted there, so I can get away without that. It doesn't support reflection, but in this case, it does support references, and that's what's going on here. So, and this actually should be, I'm going to try something here that I just read about. I'm going to try that instead. Okay, so that's actually the standard way to do it. And I have been, this is one of the reasons I like this guideline, because I have been on the fence in a couple of things that are hard to understand, and we'll get to them. This might be long, but oh well. So let me just show you this. So what I did is I put all these commands in here, and then I'm able to loop through the first argument. I loop through all the commands, and then check them against the subcommand, which was shifted off of the first argument to the overall command, and then I could actually execute that command and then pass on the rest of the arguments. So this is a cheap, effective way to get around case. Now it does, the more arguments you get, the longer it takes. You could assert bash is greater than 4. Yes, I have that actually. I usually do an assertion viable. That's a good idea. Yep. I almost always do. I don't think I have that in this one, but I almost do always do an assertion. One of the really great things about bash is that it does incrementally go through stuff. So you can actually have bash 5 features that you skip based on detecting the type of shell script. It's at that point you're kind of like out of the scope of a shell script, right? You're trying to, but having like a something that detects at the beginning is really great, and I regularly do that. But down here is the shell completion, in case you want to know. This is a very simple shell completion. It's not a bash completion, and I'll cover that in another video. But just know that all tab completion really is detecting a comp line variable. If it is set, that means that this script is being executed in tab completion mode, which means somebody hit tab instead of actually hitting enter and running it. And if they hit tab, that means comp line will be set, and you can parse out the subcommands and get up. I've tried to do subcommands with get up. Get ops. I go back and forth, the love-hate relationship with get ops. I think that get ops is fine if you take a subcommand and then shift off the one and then use get ops for the rest. I go back and forth between that. In my perfect world, their GetOps wouldn't exist, but I understand it's always going to exist. It drives me crazy. I had to write an entire wrapper for the GPG command when I was at Nike, when I was at IBM, sorry. And because why? Because the GPG command is so horribly complicated. And it was impossible for us to remember all the command options and everything. And it was why? It was largely because it was this monolithic application that had to be monolithic for security. Thankfully, I mean, Go has got open PGP libraries now and all kinds of stuff, so you can bypass all of that. But I tell that story because that really just hit home the annoyance I have with GetUp. So there's no way a conversational UI is ever going to be able to survive a GetUp world. So on the one hand, you have the world going towards more conversational UIs, with tab completion, which I really love. And then you have, the old world of, packing a lot of power in a small amount of space with GetOps, sorts of sub options. And I go back and forth. So one second I'll hate it, one second I'll love it. In my case, I don't have a lot of sub things. It's usually just an argument or so. If I were to integrate GetOps with this though, I would do it after the sub command gets shifted off. And then that would allow me to do the rest. And I believe you can do that. I haven't tried that yet with GetOps. I don't know if that first argument is going to create a problem. Don't use it yet. Don't use conversational UIs. Yeah. And so, yeah, I would rather not build a dependency on GetUp into my bash code if I can help it. And so I generally avoid that. That's just my approach. Just because I've seen them get out of control. Honestly, if you're starting to add a bunch of GetOp to your shell script, to me that's a bigger danger sign than 500 lines in a monolithic command script, because that means I'm trying to do different things that should probably be in a configuration file or script that I probably need to reach for a different language at that point. But I don't know. That's how I feel about that. So the thing I did want to show here though is that, so this is doing the completion, and so you can have a closer look at it later. Let's get back to the topic at hand. We're going through the shell review. So that's why I disagree. Is more widely compatible than Echo. Probably true. I don't mind though. Echo is 100% compatible across the board. And nothing I'm doing is a violation of Echo. Echo's been around. It's POSIX compliant. Yeah. Well, that's because I would never. Did I use a \n in an echo statement? Did you catch me doing that? If I did that, I'm making a mistake. If you caught me using echo with a \n, then you caught me making a mistake. Yep. There we go. So, yeah, I would never use \n in an echo, in a cross-platform script of any kind. You must use GetUp with short and long options because structure and consistency. Well, yeah. So yeah, I tend to avoid GetUp. I don't reach for GetUp unless I really have to, and almost always if I'm reaching for GetUp, I don't need it. I need a different kind of language, right? And that would be consistent with this here. As your script grows, avoid time racing. And it's true, it's also that whole sunk cost fallacy, right? It's like at some point you should just let it go and write it new. I will say this though, I can write so much faster in Bash. It's crazy how much faster I can write in Bash than Go. I've been writing in Go for years at this point, and I'm just starting to write in Rust. And Rust, the writing time of Rust is not going to be anywhere near Bash. Perl, people bag on it all the time, but it's if you use its context specific syntax, you can actually write things very quickly. It's just people can't read them as easily. Same problem with Bash. So, yeah. Well, accessing the complexity of your code. So those are some big domain specific languages. Yeah. How do you write a domain specific language, and what do you write for that? I think Rust is going to be my primary candidate to go to for domain specific languages, personally. My @ you got filtered from chat. Oh, did you @ me? Sorry. Yeah, so DSLs are a thing. And you teach us to make a CLI script someday with short line argument shifting, etc. Yeah, I would love to do that. There's a bunch of projects on, so this is kind of a side note. I'm preparing a bash, two things. I'm preparing a bash boost that has a number of what I call mnemonic mini projects, hello world, greet, waffles, a bunch of other silly things that you'll remember that are focused on specific content related to this kind of thing. I stream every day. I don't have my schedule up right now. I apologize. I stream every day from 11 a.m. Eastern time till 2 p.m. Sometimes longer than that. But I'm doing basically studio audience stuff during the day, stuff that, so right now you're going to be on a YouTube video. So thank you for asking. During the 11 to 2 o'clock time frame, I'll be recording videos that will land on YouTube within a day or so. Okay, and they are generally topical and they're related to the overall goal I have of capturing all this stuff. So today's video, again, to get back to it, is reviewing Google shell scripting. We have quite a bit to go, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish right at 2. Probably have to go quite a bit longer than that, but if you're welcome to stay with me. So file extensions, a bug with @ in my IRC script. Possibly. I have to go look. We're not going to get off rails on that too much. File extension, and you saw me go off on the book in the other video. So this book I reviewed, Cybersecurity Ops with Bash, from Paul Tronconi and Carl Albing, PhD. You should never pay any money for it, ever. It's full of horrible shell code that will cause you to learn to code shell in a way that's not anywhere near consistent with these style guidelines, not to mention insecure. And I started out reviewing it. You can watch the video, being very hopeful. I was really excited, and no. So executables should have no extension, strongly preferred, or a .sh extension. Libraries must have a .sh extension and should not be executable. I can't tell you how much I agree with this statement. So first of all, if you add any sort of stuff, we're going to get all kinds of fights in the chat, but anytime you add a suffix in Unix, you're causing troubles because you can't link things together in the Unix philosophy through pipelines and stuff without having to type .sh every time, and it gets really annoying. It gets really, really annoying. It's actually one of the things I blame Windows for, because Windows forced people to add extensions because it couldn't read, because the editors and everything were too stupid to read the shebang line at the beginning of the script to identify what interpreter was needed. And so Windows specifically caused people to start putting extensions. There is a huge exception to that. When you're writing a library of any kind, particularly in shell, there is no shebang line, nor should there be a shebang line, in my opinion. When you're writing a library, it's meant to be sourced into something else. And that means you may be actually writing a shell library that can be sourced into Z shell, bash, POSIX shell or whatever. And you shouldn't be forcing, in which case, by the way, the shebang line would be ignored. But the idea that there's a shebang line there and that you've set the library file to be executable are two conflicting messages when it has to be, no, this is meant to be included in another file. This is meant to be sourced. And in that case, an extension makes a world of difference. It's super good idea to do that. Number one, because it gives you the syntax highlighting. Number two, it says to you loud and clear, this is not a command. Do not run me. All right. And so when people use .sh and make a thing executable, it really triggers me, because that sends a mixed message. What are you? Are you a library, or are you a command? Or are you trying to be both like Python does all the time? No. Okay. So just don't put extensions. The other reason to not have an extension is you may want to swap out that thing. I don't know how many times I have changed languages. I've had, I think, like, for example, my tstamp command has been at least 3 different languages over the last 10, 15 years. At one time it was a shell script, and then it was a POSIX script, and it was a Perl script, and it was a Python script, and then it was a Golang compiled. I always was coming up with different ways and trying silly things that I would do to try to make my entire scripts library, my entire binary executable tree, all the same language for some stupid reason. But the point is that if I had changed suffixes every time, I couldn't have done that, right? You can't swap it. You don't care what it's written in. That's immaterial. That's the whole Unix way. Allow yourself to benefit from the encapsulation of leaving off the suffixes. Okay, so let's keep going. It's not necessary to know what language it is, and that's exactly what Google's making a point about. Yeah, that's atrocious, Viable. However, for libraries, it's important to know what language it is, and sometimes we'll have different kind of libraries. Great. syntax highlighting. That nope. You can't cite. Okay, you cannot cite extensions. You cannot cite suffixes for syntax highlighting. Because the only case that that's true is on Windows and a non-Unix system. And if you're doing Windows development for a Unix system, you have bigger problems. Okay, so syntax highlighting is detected through the shebang line. And if you don't have a shebang line, you're not doing Unix scripting. All right. So, yeah, and you can definitely symlink. I've seen people do that, which is stupid, but you can do it. And yeah, so anyway, yeah, if I mean, you guys are welcome to do all kinds of stupid things that, get you talking to on a team at Google. You can do whatever the dumb things you want. I don't care. I'm just telling you how people who've been doing this for a long time professionally do it, and how Google agrees we should be doing it. Only in Nix scripting, I was thinking overall. No, absolutely not. And I do believe I said that. If you are coding on Windows, you have to have that stupid .py extension if you're doing Python. Oh my God, is that dumb? I hate it. It's enough to drive people to do only Unix, Linux scripting and coding just for that. Thank God WSL2 exists. You don't have to ever live in that world again. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so let's see. SetUID, SGID are forbidden on shell scripts. No kidding. In fact, you can't even do SetUID. If you don't know what this is how you provide elevated permissions. SetUID and SetGID, what they do is they allow a script when it runs to run as the owner of the script and not as the person executing the script. So that's what that is. It's actually not allowed in most shell systems. There are a few exceptions to that. Perl does some curious things. It has a version of itself, an interpreter that will allow it to do this. But just don't do it. It's a bad idea. SetUID in general, unless you absolutely know what you're doing, don't ever do it. It can really give over the security of your hey Guru tricks of your whole system. All right. So what else are we gonna do here? So we've got standard out and standard error. Some stuff here. Now I want to just make a note here that I'm gonna watch your eyes here for a second, okay? Seriously, watch your eyes, people. This is how this page is written, and I'm zoomed in, so it's a little bit easier to read. This is why I don't like syntax highlighting, and I know it's a counter. It's not culture opinion, but I think syntax highlighting can seriously mess you up when you're trying to just focus on the code. And so I prefer to move away from that right here. Okay, so here we go. So this is just telling you to print out error messages. Okay, we got it. Comments. Comments they have a set way of doing comments, which is cool. So then we have they have globals listed, and most companies will have something like this at the top. I do think that's a good idea. I don't do it, but as much as I should. But this is a good idea. I usually put comments in a little bit cleaner way. I don't necessarily have them all blocked out like this. But there is an ESLint for Bash. That's why I found this, guys. Is I found one that I'll talk about later. They use the function keyword, which I strongly disagree with that. Not only is it more typing and super annoying, but I could see the somebody could make a case, well, it's easier to find. But first of all, most of them aren't even functions at all. They're subroutines or they're procedures. They are not functions, and I refuse to call them functions. They are not functions. A function takes in input and returns output. And in many of the earlier languages, Pascal and others had that. So what I would do instead here is I would have cleanup, space, and then parentheses, and then a space, and then that. And that is a much more standard syntax. It's also completely and totally supported by POSIX. The function keyword is not POSIX compliant. And we're not going to go into every single case where that's different. But if there's no reason to break POSIX compliance, why do it? And this certainly isn't one of those times. I strongly disagree with this directive from Google about putting the function keyword here. Later on, they don't do it as much. Anyway, so this does tell you what's going on here. Delete a file in a sophisticated manner. Okay, RM1. That's really dumb to do that, actually. So anyway, Uh, implementation comments, okay. They have a to-do comment. I thought this was a curious thing. They have a to-do comment and it says who did it to kind of find the person. That's kind of cool. I'm going to keep going down the web version of this just because this one caught me off guard. I won't lie. They have set up a 2-space indentation limitation, and I want to tell you, the last 2 days, I'll talk about this in the blog review. The last 2 days, I've been struggling between 4 and 2-space indentation because I've been doing a lot more Rust, and Rust uses the Python PEP guidelines for this kind of thing. It uses a standard 2-space indent. There's a lot of things about the Python PEP guidelines that really annoy me. For example, underscores. I hate underscores. I used to be a huge fan of underscores, and particularly in shellcode, you will never find a command on the command line that has an underscore in it. And if you do, it's usually some one-off written by somebody who doesn't do it. If you have the need to break up a command on the shell into more than one, or within the same amount of things, it's almost always got a dash in it, SSH or dash keygen. But even that becomes complicated because why? Because when you're telling somebody over the phone or something what to do, you're like, you need to do SSH dash keygen. Well, they think it's an argument, so they do SSH space dash keygen, and you're like, they get confused. So first of all, don't do it if you don't have to. Pick names that don't have to be broken up if you possibly can do that. If you can't, hyphen keygen, that kind of thing. If you, so that's a different thing. I kind of got ahead of myself. That is coming up. But anyway, so the 2-space indent thing, I wasn't expecting to find, and I do agree with that. I have been using that for a long time. I used to throw a lot of shade over at the JavaScript community for using 2-space indent, and I now actually think that that's the way to go. I love it. I went back to 4 spaces for the last 2 days on some of my shell code, and particularly YAML code, which is white space dependent. So some people hate it, but if it's, when you're talking about YAML code in particular, you're counting on indentation to provide data structure format, which is one of the biggest complaints and pluses of YAML anyway. But as soon as it's 4 spaces, it gets really annoying. So I went back to 2 spaces, and I'm going to stick with that. And then I actually added an on save. It's called a Vim pre-leave. There's a Vim pre-leave event, and you can map formatting your entire file on every save, and then you don't care. They don't care, right? Tab should never been always use 4 space. Well, yeah. So the problem is I think you should use the style of the organization that you live in and work with, and if there does exist a style guideline for the language, you should use that second. So the style of the existing project, number 1, is your first pick. The style that your organization has defined, which Google has done for its entire organization, number 2. And number 3, the style that's used by the language. And if the language defines a style. Go very clearly defines a style. Rust very, very clearly defines a style, Rust FMT. But I can write 2 spaces all I want in my tabs with Rust FMT, and when the file gets exited, it gets formatted the way other Rust people expect to see it. Same for Go. And I am shooting for that same sort of thing for shell scripting. And it turns out I found that. In fact, it was while looking for that very thing that I found this style guide, because there's a tool that's written in Go. I don't have it in front of me right now, that you can actually set to use Google style guidelines, and it claims to format. I haven't tested yet, but it claims to format your code after you in the same way Go FMT does or Rust FMT does. All right. I don't, believe me, don't get me started with the underscores. So using blank lines between blocks to improve readability. I agree with that. Let's see, line length and long strings. Maximum line length is 80 characters. No, just no. In fact, Linus Torvalds did a huge thing on this. I'll let you do the search. I'm not going to go find it for you right now. Linus Torvalds made a big deal about not needing 80 characters anymore, and he did it like within the last 2 weeks. Basically, we work on large 16:9. Almost everybody has a 16:9 terminal at this point. We need to stop being, it doesn't hurt to try to maintain minimal line lengths, and I do use 80 characters maximum, which in my vimrc means that I have a maximum line wrap at 73 because I want to have room for my gutter. I want my gutter to work. Yep, there it is. There's the one. Thank you for that, guys. So I disagree with this line length consideration. I think it's a recommendation. Yeah, but if somebody keep the tab spaces of 8, yeah, me too. He's also really big into using tabs instead of other stuff too. So that, I mean, there's things that I don't agree with. If you need more than 80, then do blah blah blah. It says don't use a here doc, which I completely agree with. There's no reason to ever use a here doc like this. In fact, some people were saying to use here docs as long comments, and I am going to strongly suggest you not do that. That invokes so much unnecessary headache on your code compared to just straight up comments that it's just stupid. Don't do it. Don't do it, because as soon as you use a here doc, even if you use like a single quoted version, you're invoking a bunch of extra parsing that has to happen, where if it was just a commented line, it wouldn't even read it. Don't follow that. I just found one. I found this is the problem by giving, when you teach by giving challenges, you give challenges to people and say, hey, go figure it out. Like they're completing over the wire or some kind of thing like that and finding their own answers. And then they find all these crappy answers out there that teach them things like using here documents for long comments in Bash. Don't do that. Just don't do it. Please don't do it. Okay. So, any modern, can you, yeah, whatever the visual width. Well, we're not gonna fight about tabs versus spaces. That's we can have our opinions on that and go our separate ways. As long as we have, I think we all can agree that every language needs an FMT tool, because I've never once used a tab in Go, but every single line of Go code that I've produced has all been published with tabs in it. Why? Because I use the Go FMT tool. I don't care. I don't care. I can write it however I want. In fact, I regularly do that. I'll just put like one space of indentation and let the formatting take over. It's super cool, because then I don't even have to think about it. I can be sloppy in my writing, because then I know, and you probably shouldn't be sloppy in your writing, but if I want to write stuff more quickly, I can save it and I know it's going to get formatted automatically for me. And I don't have to worry about it. Okay. Embedded new lines are okay too. So this is the thing. It says do use here documents. If you legitimately need a here document, go for it. The reason I don't like here documents, guys, is that here documents that have indentation on them have to have a tab. They have to have a tab. And so what that does is it puts tabs in your text files. And that's why I'm a big anti here doc person if I can avoid them, because when I do here docs, they have to be to the left justified, otherwise they're going to have big problems. There are ways to make them tab justified. You guys probably know it. It's a dash, and if you do that, it will chomp any initial tabs up to the content. And if somebody knows differently than that, please let me know, because I would love to be able to change that to use spaces and to just eliminate all initial white space from a here doc. 9 times out of 10, though, when I want a here doc, I want like verbatim text. So yeah. Okay. 3 space code indentation. Nope. I'm not going to be a guy for that. Pipes. Okay, so pipes continuing on a separate line. That's no problem there. This one really made me happy. This one about loops. Okay, so the one about loops. So it says here, did we have to tell music, or we went out of my music? Yes, I need my music back. All right, so this one actually really made me happy, because I have seen too many like stuffy textbooks put the do down on the separate line and put the then down on the separate line, including the stupid book I just reviewed. So I have never, ever liked that. I think it is visually distracting. When I see something indented, I want to see something indented. I want my nests to nest. I don't want to have 2 levels of nesting. This is why I hate K&R style, where they put the separate curly bracket. I absolutely detest that style, and thank God there are other rational people in the world who also detest it the same way as I do. Exit fair. Oh gosh, no. But so yeah, that's very much a pluralism. So anyway, this thing here, some people get really triggered by that. I love it. I love it, and I'm really glad Google agrees. Okay, so. That's just the way of doing nesting. We'll keep going. Case statements. So case statements, indent alternatives by 2 spaces. I love this. It's so great. I mean, they nailed my exact style. This is exactly what I do. Looks like they would like my shell scripts at Google. I'm glad. A one-line alternative needs a space after the closing parentheses, blah, blah, blah. I almost always put these on their own line. I just think that makes it much more readable. Rarely, when you only have like one line of thing, I'll put that on the same line. But that's a big thing. Case statements are seriously important in shell scripting, particularly in the world of like, sort of a macro command with subcommands. Not so much a monolith, but, that kind of thing. Simple commands. Okay. Simple commands may be put on the same line. So this is what I was talking about, where they put them on the same line with this here. That reverse, let's say, I hate people that reverse order comparisons. Like, oh yeah, a lot of people don't like that. That's a seriously big pet peeve for most people, Mac. I've learned. I used to like doing it, but I've changed my ways. I would rather put what's being checked first all the time. Short circuit kind of idea. Yeah, it isn't how your brain thinks. I completely agree. Yeah. Too Perlish. It is very Perlish. I won't lie. It is very Perlish. And it doesn't make any sense, right? It's like exit. Okay. When? Oh, when you're doing this. It doesn't make any sense, right? Logically, it doesn't make any sense to process that way. So yeah, I agree with you on that. Yes, I totally agree. Everybody's triggered by that. we all agree. Keep the L value on the L value side. Keep the logic on the left, right? Unless you're, you know what? Have you ever wondered? I mean, this is kind of a side note, but have you ever wondered what it's like to be, to think like a Chinese person or somebody who who reads right to left? I mean, that is seriously interesting to me, because they're being forced to think about things in the opposite way. Now they already have to do that because they're learning English to write code. PowerShell commands to do if, which is why, never ever rust. MacGyver's got that on a macro. See, you love slamming my rust. Hebrews are reading from right to left too. See, yeah. So there's a lot of them doing it, which I just find interesting, how they live in a world where, English has been pretty much the deciding language for all of this stuff. As to me, as when learning Arabic, is the numbers are a little Indian. Oh, interesting. Okay, well, let's keep going. So here we go. For most, we have the get ops, simple commands. We did this with that one already. Variable expansion. Now this is something else that I've been called on the stream, and I'm going to change my ways. I'm going to tell you right now. So they make a very good case that putting curly brackets around your variable all the time is a good idea. And I actually looked at some of my code the other day that didn't do this, and it was just a bunch of dollar signs, kind of blah, all over the place. And so there's kind of a cognitive switching that happens when you have all of your variables have curlies, or in the situation where you have some of them have curlies and some of them don't. And so I actually want to improve the being able to scan quickly my code by having all of my variables be that way. And another reason I want to do that is because I want to be able to search through my code using VI search command and say, I want to find curly var name curly. And I absolutely know that I will never find a bit of code that has that. I certainly can't search for dollar. It gets in the way anyway, because dollar is, it's often used to indicate the end of line and stuff like that in a search. But my point being is that I really like the consistency of having curly brackets around every single variable I use, except these special variables, which are always going to be reliably able to find. So variables. So this is something that I'm going to start doing a lot more. I wasn't as strict with myself on this particular point, but I agree with it. I think they make a lot of good cases here. Strong recommendation guidelines, not mandatory regulation. Nonetheless, the fact that is a recommendation, not mandatory, doesn't mean it shouldn't be taken lightly. They are listed in order of precedence. So there's probably going to be a lot of disagreement in this particular point. So the first thing they say is, if it is a regular, if it's a special variable that includes all the argument expansions or any of these special variables, go for it. Just use $. We're all good. And that's fine, because if you see $, you should probably, immediately want to see the next thing after that. But if you see $, with a curly right after it, you can almost grep-v that out of your mind and say, oh, no, that's a variable. Here comes a variable or some sort of parameter expansion. And I love that. I love that idea that I can reliably find any variable in my script anywhere by searching for $curly. And so I'm going to start practicing this. This is something you can even do in POSIX if you wanted to. It's not very common in the shell scripting I did for IBM. It was not common to encounter that. People would just use variable names. But then again, in POSIX, everything's a global anyway, so it's always all caps, and those are a lot much easier to find. So anyway, so I'm a fan of this, and I plan to use that. I don't think this is a good situation to ever be in. Yeah. So this here is here we have sort of a situation that I don't think I would ever want to see. 9 times out of 10, if I am going to do something with the arguments, the special variables, for arguments, I almost always put those into another variable, usually because I'm doing some sort of parameter expansion to ensure a default value, or something else like that, or I'm shifting it off. So I follow a practice, at least I try to, of not of like using variables for things. First of all, I use functions for almost everything. We call them functions because they call them functions. They're actually subroutines, but whatever. And so we put these things there. So that's a very uncommon case. And the reason I also don't want to do that is because this would be like the one exception to being able to search for $, left curly, and always find every variable. I think it's really cool about that is if you think about it, you can search for $, left curly, and you can end your way through your whole script, finding every single variable that's ever been defined in there. And that's pretty damn awesome. And I don't want to mess that up by having a few 1, 2, and 3, argument parameter, positional parameters or whatever, popping up where I would have otherwise expected a variable to be. Plus, it doesn't give me any information about it. So if I'm screaming through the file and I'm ending, it's like $1, what is that? See, another reason to spend a little bit of extra time to declare a variable and associate it with a name. So when I'm looking at that, I can queue off the name and then just keep going. All right. So next, preferably style for other variables. Echo path equals path, path equals PWD. Preferred style for other variables. We got that. Okay. So. And this is the thing, they do make a thing about underscores in the variables. I never, ever put underscores. The only time I ever use underscores in a variable name is if the only ever time is if it's a global and it has to, in which case it seems to make more sense. If it's a small or a localized variable, I almost never, ever, I find something to name it that doesn't have to have a space in the middle, just because it's just so annoying to have to go through that. I do not use camel case for shell scripts, but I would not be opposed to it, personally. That's me personally. I am a fan. When I was a Perl programmer and even into the Python days, I was big into underscores, and then after working for years with Perl and Python with underscores and occasionally having terminals really screw up and not show the underscores, not having them to be able to read them. Plus I got older. I've come to hate underscores. I've come to really hate them. They're so hard to see. Dashes or hyphens are so much easier to see. I wish to high heaven it's funny, you guys know NIM? N-I-M? Do you know the language NIM? Anybody here done any NIM programming? I haven't tried any NIM programming at all, but in NIM, it doesn't matter. Yeah, I'll kid you not. In NIM, you can put any kind of separator that you want. In NIM, you can use underscore, dash, or remove the whole thing, because what it does is it removes all of those things. You can even use camel case, and it will crunch the whole thing down into the exact same symbol, which is a little scary because, when I saw the flexibility of that, I was like, oh my God, that is like so confusing. Dash confusing to a minus operator. I agree. Viable, I agree with you. I agree. I don't like it, but I agree with it. However, if it's a command, I'm generally going to use a dash instead, because there's already a precedent for that. There's more of a precedent for using dash as command names on the command line than there is to use an underscore as a command on the command line. Underscore as a function is pretty common, and as a symbol, as a variable name, that's pretty common all over the world in all the languages. It's extremely unlikely to have an underscore in a command on the Unix command line. So if I have to split something up, I'm generally going to put a dash in it, like SSH-keygen does, and all the rest. However, I even think those are bad. I would rather come up with a name that is short and sweet and easy to type, that doesn't have anything like that in there. That's just me. All right. Dash is common in Lisp language where there is no dash operator. Right. I'm more of a kebab case kind of guy. Yeah. And I really love, actually, in YAML, you guys are going to shoot me, but I really love that YAML lets you use dashes, or even white space in your keys. And I love that. Because I can use dashes when I really need them. And I absolutely hate JSON with underscores in it. I hate it because I can't read it. It just goes all together. Anyway, so I think a lot of things are really weird and wacky. For example, Go has convinced me, after looking at it for so long, Go has convinced me to use uppercase initial caps on many more things than I would have done before, and I'm really happy that I have. It's made it much more human readable. So yeah, it's not an operation; it's just another function, right? For classes, I'm talking about. Well, I don't write classes at all anymore. A little bit in JavaScript here and there, but anyway. So here we go. So $, unquoted bars for single letter special characters. Okay, we're gonna get through this. We're doing a pretty good time. I didn't expect this to be a fast thing, but then I won't have to go over it lots of times. Using braces in var is not a form of quoting. So this is important to note. When you do the braces, it does not quote you. You still need to double quote. And that's a lot of typing, but whatever. You don't need to do that if you're writing like a wicked awesome one-liner you're going to hack somebody with. But if you're writing code that's going to exist, you're going to have to read, might as well. Always quote strings containing variable names. This is so important. I'm going to spend a little bit longer time on this because so many beginning shell programmers screw this up to great, effect. It's very dangerous to screw this up. So always quoting strings containing variables, command substitutions. Here, listen to this. Any string with variables, command substitutions, spaces or shell meta characters, unless carefully unquoted expansion is required, or it's a shell internal integer. Okay, and we're going to talk about that. So if it's a number, fine. If it's anything else, and you'll see me actually over quoting a lot of times and having to back out my quotes because I've over quoted. So like, for example, if you quote during the assignment to a variable, and then you call that variable on the command line later, you don't need to quote it again. And I do it all the time, and it's like, I don't know what this is, and it's trying to look for a command that has a quote in it because I overquote it. If you've done any shell scripting, you probably know what I'm talking about. So I'm not fully functional, but not class-based object-oriented programming ever again, for reasons that Jim Copleen explains very well, much better than me. Another video for that. All right, so use arrays for safe quoting of lists of elements, and I love this. This is not something I was doing on purpose, but I love to see this spelled out, and so I want to kind of think about this a bit. Using arrays for safe quoting of lists of elements, especially command line flags. See arrays below, and there's an example of this below. So basically, he's suggesting use arrays more. And I don't think we use arrays nearly as much as we could be using them in shell. And now that we have associative arrays in Bash 4 Plus, that's even a better reason to do that. Optionally quote shell internal read-only special variables that are defined to be integers. So these guys in Bash prefer quoting of named integer variables, PPID. So this is actually something I do a lot. There's a couple times when you can look up the variable through its long name that's readable or its crazy name, right? Actually, it's this one. That's the return value. And then, so use the one that you can read. That's like that's a no-brainer. Prefer quoting strings that are words as opposed to command options, path names. Never quote literal integers, which I've done on accident. Writing scripts, yes, Haskell is really great for that kind of thing. But again, don't use suffixes, right? Because you can't switch back and forth. Be aware of the quoting rules for pattern matches. This is so important, and we're going to come back to this later. Use this, and you just saw me change something in my Twitch script. This is the one to this day. I've been coding shell for how many years? 15 years. I always get this screwed up. Always. I always have to look it up. I'm like, what is the difference between $* and $and? Well, even if you can't get your head around the difference, this guideline is all you need to remember. Use quotes around $& unless you have one of the exceptional cases where you should use $. And one of those cases is when you want to slam all the arguments together as a single string. And let me give you an example of that. So every time I search what are positional parameters in bash, okay, so I'm trying to search for all of that, right? Those are all individual arguments, but I use a $* on this because I slam them all together and turn them into a single string. All right, and so when it does a search, you'll see this search thing, what are the positional parameters, and it puts a parentheses in there. So that's one of the very few cases where you would use a $. So one of the great things I like about this little guideline is that it actually says, just use this. Anytime you think you want to, so say you just shifted off a variable and you want to call a subcommand, which is a very common thing to do in this new sort of, macro command world that I told you about with the Twitch earlier. Do it like this. Just if you want to pass all the leftover arguments, do it like that and you're safe. And that will properly white space quote them and everything. If for some reason you want to smash all those arguments together and make them into a string and then pass that on, then you would use this. And in fact, you'd put quotes around it. You put double quotes around that. And when you do that, then the whole thing goes off exactly as expected. So yeah. Single quotes, and there's lots of stuff in my code base that doesn't do that right now, so don't use that as a basis. If you see it, you just know that that's what I'm changing it to. Okay, we're about halfway through. I'm going to scream through this for some of this. So here's one that I have not been doing and I'm now going to start doing. When I use a command substitution, do we have music? When I use a command substitution, I generally do not quote it. I just have it. And I can see the reasons for doing that. So I need to start doing that. And I'm going to start quoting out any command substitution. So that's part of their reason. And that's a good reason to do that because that helps avoid any kind of shell expansion you might be expecting. It's just as safe as, commenting out. Quoting a variable as well. So here's a regular variable that we already know we have to do, right? If you don't do that, by the way, what happens? Anybody ever try to echo something without quotes around it? What happens? Anybody know? What happens if you try to echo the content of a variable that has line returns in it without quotes? We lost everybody. Right, this is boring. So let me show you. I'm still going to make the video anyway, so don't worry, people who are watching in the studio audience. No, it doesn't watch. So, all right, I'm going to show you real quick. Oh, or you just don't know. Okay, that's fair. So, what am I doing? All right, so check this out. This is a real big deal. So we're going to say name equals... I don't know, Mr. Rob Murstein. Now I've been totally doxxed. Now watch this though. So echo name. Actually, that's a bad idea. Let's use printf. No, that's not going to work either. I'm trying to think of an example I can give you. That's not a good one. Anyway, so if you put quotes around it, well, all right. So we have to escape it, first of all. All right, so there we go. But if I take the quotes off, Nope, still works. I can't find an example of it. I've just failed on stream. Let me just trust me on this one. Someone find me a good example of this. This is what I'm talking about. So there are many, many cases where if you do not put quotes around it, it will actually, so watch, something nice. It will put everything on the same, it won't put a space between them. I'm trying to figure out a case where that's been a thing. I cannot tell you how many times I've been burned by this. So let me just tell you the situation I've been burned by. Maybe I can find it again. So you just go to echo, just like something casual, and there's a variable in it. And that's not a good example of that, I guess. You know why that's not an example? Okay, so let's try this. All right, let me try this. Here we go. All right. You're not gonna get this part, but I'm just gonna. Let's see. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. You see that? I found it. I found out how to do it because the escaping was getting in the way. So sometimes when you have a literal, like an actual line return, not an escape line return, and you get this all the time with color or escape sequences or something like that. You see what it did? It printed it just fine, but watch this one now. See that? All right. So, that is what I'm talking about. I'm glad I was able to do that. By the way, this is one of the coolest things about Bash. I want to tell you, I love this. If you do $single quotes, it automatically escapes the content and gives you the actual value. So the thing that goes into name doesn't have \n in it. It has an actual line return binary, bit string. And isn't that cool? So what I'm trying to tell you is, and this is actually one of the cases somebody was, I think Bible was saying the difference between echo and printf. Because watch, if you without the quotes like I just did, printf will do the right thing every time. So, well, printf also requires you, I'm pretty sure. I don't know, maybe I'm lying. That's interesting. It only printed the first one. Actually, it just forces you to be more explicit. It's really nothing. Yeah, that's interesting too. That was very interesting. Why did that put them all together? I know. I mean, this is fun. I'm just screwing around now. Oh, that's not a thing. Interesting. I don't use Printf very much. I use it in other languages that actually have more escapes than this. So that's what's going on. This actually looks kind of scary to me. Oh, that was a revelation. Did you see what just happened? Yeah, you guys got it. I caught up. I didn't quite get the hint just now. Now, like Thor's Lost Kitten just showed me. Something like source. Yes, it's true, Vera. So that's curious. So yeah, God, people, make sure you quote them variables. Quote them variables. Because it's not the same. It's not the same. You know what it did? It expanded everything in the name into individual. That is crazy. That means it expanded everything into the name into an individual argument. Holy cow. Watch this. If I actually do $1, Mr. Bell style, Robble style. What the heck is that? That was kind of weird. Robell style. I don't even know what that did. And a printf string. I don't think so. Let's try it. Oh, you might have it. You've got it. That I've got to remember that. I'm going to take a screenshot of that. That is a great, I've been trying to get a way to demonstrate the difference between quoting and non-quoting, and I just accidentally fell upon the greatest way to show that. So check this out. So All right, so let's do all three cases again because I'm going to actually video this. All right, so first of all, we're going to assign a name, and we're going to assign a name. All right, so and we're doing it this way because we want to make sure to put the \n and convert that we're using this syntax with the dollar because that forces the escape to be resolved and to be replaced with an actual line return, not the escape sequence showing a line return. So when we do that, now we have a variable name. And so then how do you print that out, right? Well, the first thing you might do is echo name, $name. And that's not what I have, right? So this is the first example of what went wrong. And what actually went wrong is that you are sending Mr. Rob Milstein to echo as arguments 1, 2, and 3. And so echo is resolving this as if they were all individual arguments rather than one thing. So what it's doing is this $name is not going in as a single argument. It's being expanded into 3 arguments into the echo command. I'm going to prove it right now. So if I use printf, right? Printf specifically calls out each item as a thing, right? And we can even put it, like a dash in here, and then a dash in here. And you'll know that this printf, everybody knows printf would not work unless this has 3 arguments. Well, this is going to work just fine because why? Because name is not a single argument. It's been expanded by white space splitting into 3 arguments, Mr., Rob, and Milstein. So the moral of the story is quote your variables because you don't know what it's going to do. In fact, I bet you I could even make it do some other command in there if I really wanted to. I don't know, but it's definitely not what you're expecting. You're expecting name to be a big long string, and the shell expansion is causing it to be 3 individual arguments. So what we have to do here, if I want to do this right, is I have to quote name. And when I quote name, you'll see that it's sending the whole thing as a single string, and then the other 2 are empty. So that's what it's doing. So that make sure I'm going to clip that. That is super important that you understand that. So make sure you quote your variables. That is the moral of the story of this Google segment as well. Quote your variables, and that's why. Otherwise, you'll get that kind of danger. Anyway, so let's keep going. Use arrays with quoted expansion for lists. We talked about using arrays. The declare-a says make flags into an array. And then this is the array syntax. I could have done this on the same line. Did I say $name? Sorry about that. Wait, what are you talking about? I wonder, guys, I wonder if I have one more thing to try. Let's try this one. Nope, still a problem. So that still needs to be quoted, and they were making the point about that earlier. So okay, good to know. Anyway, so here we have read-only flags. This is a new keyword that I think I may have seen, but I didn't really deeply internalize it. And as of today, I'm going to use it a lot, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later. Read-only is a synonym for declare-r, which means make me a read-only thing, a constant. And unfortunately, you can change it later, but you can still do it like this as long as you have the read-only in front. No idea, dude. Stupak, if you can please recreate that, please let me know, because that would be a significant difference between Z Shell and Bash. I mean, like, substantial difference in syntax. What are you talking about? Your line prints the line return. Stupak, can you please make absolutely sure you have these lines exactly the same? I have a feeling that this is not supported by Z Shell. Yeah. So, guys, how about this? Can you even do this one? I don't think that's a Z Shell supported syntax. So I have a feeling that the parameter expansion and stuff. I have a feeling that the parameter expansion is the same, but I think the thing that's tripping you up is you don't have this syntax right here, and it works fine for me. Okay, Yeah, I'd appreciate you guys reporting if you actually do find, if there's anybody out there who wants to take the time to like fire up a bash shell and then fire up a Z shell and compare the two side by side exactly, which I will do if you don't, let me know, because it'll be one of the many things that I'll document that are different between bash and Z shell. Not to say that one's better than the other, but there are some pretty substantial differences that need to be called out before you go down the Z shell path. What is this? That is already here? I ordered this green screen yesterday.
Well, it came from the warehouse phone.
No, 2 days ago. I ordered this green screen 2 days ago. Does it work? It's already here. Must be one of those things lots of people order. Z shell prints the line return. Really? Bash does not. Oh. Guys, at least we know. You know, now we know. We know the difference, right? So, you know, I keep harping on this. Okay, so no one thing by itself is really triggering about Z shell. I mean, there's a lot of things that trigger me, but you know, not exporting functions is the biggest one that triggers me. But really what's happening to me with Z shell lately is all of these little tiny inconsistencies. Somebody was telling me it does floating point math when bash only does, you know, integer division, and all of a sudden, you know, floor division, that kind of thing. All these tiny little differences are starting to add up in a way that scares me a little bit. Scripts in Z shell dialog. Anyway, well, I don't know, guys, but it's so that it concerns me. It concerns me that people they're starting to get subtly. You know, here's another one that doesn't work on Z shell. Since we're talking about it, try this. Somebody actually did this something. All right. So somebody was told by a YouTuber, else shall go on unnamed, that you could just, whoops, sorry. So I could just do this instead of cat temp foo. Okay. Somebody in our Discord who was stressed told me that they were told on a YouTube channel that works just fine everywhere. It obviously doesn't. It only works on bash. This was the first, and probably I mean, I've talked about it a lot on the stream, and I apologize. I keep harping on this one thing, but it was an example of where a disconnect between Z shell and bash is kind of turning out to be a disservice to all those who are trying to learn, because they're being told things that work everywhere, and then they're finding out they don't work in the environment that they're being paid to use, which is almost always going to be bash. And so that is triggering me more than anything. Right. So I just, you know, I just think it's a lot of cognitive overhead for a beginner to pick up bash because they like Powerline, and then find out over time that the stuff that they learn doesn't work when they go into the scripting arena. If it's possible to separate the two, that's fine, I guess. Anyway, just be careful about that. Let's go back into the Z shell thing. Bash thing, the bash Google shell. All right, so we're going to go some of this stuff we're going to have to go over pretty quickly. I don't want to, this is getting pretty long, running out of time. So it's okay. It says here, it's okay to not quote internal string variables, integer variables. And okay, so, I mean, that's obviously a thing. We're going to talk about the use of double parentheses in a bit. This is something else that I'm going to start doing a lot more. That I did not do before. So echo PPID equals PPID, right? Okay. So this is never quote literal strings. This makes little integers. This is obvious. When you do that, you turn your number into a string essentially. So don't do that. This says quote command substitutions. So doing that for sure. Read only, prefer quoting words, not compulsory. I think this is probably good practice. I don't do it, but it's definitely worth doing. Process IDs need to be double quoted. Of course, always quote your echo output. It's a super big reason for doing that. Like we just talked, print any, quote any output of any kind. So here we go. Some greps here, some examples. Some shell expansion going on there. All right, what else? What is this? We're passing in arguments. This talks about using this one every time. This is quite an explanation of why you would do that. And I'm gonna let you read about that, but we already talked about it. Just if you don't need to understand the difference between $ampersand and $star, just hey, hi, how's it going, Raiders? Just remember, Raid not showing up. That's fine. Hey, Ash, I'm sorry, buddy. I don't have it showing. So I'm still going through this YouTube. Welcome. You're on YouTube. You're going to be on my video. We're going through the rest of the shell, the shell scripting guide from Google, which I encourage you guys to go read on your own. It's really great. Here's the URL for all y'all if you want it, so you can go read it on your own. We're about halfway down, and then we'll be going down. All right, so the shell check project. Okay, so finding, doing my own research and reading about this one thing made it all worth it. This one thing. So I have never heard of the shell check project. Y'all, I just y'all. Hi from Spain. So I found this project out, and I am going to do this on everything. So all of you guys have been asking about linting and formatting your shell scripts. Put your ears on. That's what this is about. So the shell check project, which I just had to do an install, a sudo apt install. In my case, I'm on a Debian system. I did not know about shell check. So I actually ran shell check on my disastrously bad Twitch script, which I've been, as you guys know, been hacking on for just like as fast as I can to make a new thing work. If you guys want, actually, let me give you a copy of my Twitch script. That'd be more. So here is the Twitch script, so you can look at it yourself if you want and see all the things I did wrong. So here, shell check, and then I'm just doing a which. See, now if I was doing this properly, I'm supposed to be doing this, right? Which you know what, I might start doing, but you don't really need it. So here's like all of the problems. There's like so many problems. I'm so embarrassed. Also, my less doesn't do color, which needs to be fixed. And you better escape. Yeah, you saw me. You know what though? If you're coding quickly, right? So yeah, so I escaped it, right? Yeah. I don't do that normally, but in fact, I probably, you know what? Just a second. I think my VIC. Oh wait, type VIC. Yep, I'm not. Look at that. I'm not even following the convention in this script right here. So I'm actually gonna go fix that right now. So, yep. And it's good test here. So I'm going into my dot files, and I'm gonna go into my scripts, and I'm gonna fix my little thing here. I have an alias called VIC, which is, you saw it. It's pretty basic. And what it does is it's kind of cool. Like, let's say you have a script, right, and you need to tweak a thing, but you don't want to go find it. We can just VI it at its location, and now it's proper. Now I'm doing it right? I had a big problem in there before. Is that a function rather than an alias for a reason? I don't know. Let's try it. I don't think because I had an argument. Usually, always when you have an argument, it can't be passed in. I don't imagine I could do that as a non-script. Anybody else have a different opinion of that? The bash man page says that you should prefer exported functions over aliases, which you can't do at all with Z shell, by the way. And so, you could put that as a script too. That could be a one-line script. I've noticed a lot of Z shell. In fact, you'll see me using shell scripts a lot more and more. I had an issue with using a VIN script sometimes. Not sure. Yeah. There's no reason that this could not be a script other than performance. It would just be a little bit slower, but you never know the difference on the command line. And in fact, you know what? I'm gonna make a command decision right now, and I'm gonna make that alias. So this is something I've been doing recently. And those of you who saw me streaming like in December and January, and will know that I was like exported functions crazy. And here's the thing about exported functions. To share an exported function with somebody, they have to put it into, I can use dash on this. I don't even need to use bash at all. And so, but it does have an argument. So yeah, And so, everybody's like, well, why would you use a shell script just for that? Honestly, this makes a lot of sense as a function. And before I had like an 1,000 line bash RC file with lots of exported functions in there, rather than having them as individual shell scripts. And I mean, I was really railing on the fact that Z shell does not have exported functions, even though there's really good reason for that. It's debatable whether, I mean, there's the whole bash backdoor and stuff. This is all bash related. So, but the main reason that I personally was convinced to do it, it didn't have anything to do with that debate. It had to do with the practical ability to share. So for example, now that this is in my it's here, it is now a script. Okay. Another reason for that is, for any reason, if I wanted to write that as something besides a shell script, I could write it as an executable, and it would be just a script. It's definitely more portable across the board, across POSIX and everything, to have a massive library of scripts in your scripts directory, your bin directory, than it is to have a bunch of exported functions that, even though you've exported them, will work in your subscripts, can't be used in anything else, frankly, that requires an executable. And I think I went overboard a little bit on the exported functions back in the day, because, for example, if, let's say I wanted to have another script that sort of ends by opening up by running VIC, right? So in this case, I could write a script, blah, 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 blah. And at the end of the script, I'd have exec VIC file name. And it would replace the currently running program with the new program, open it up with VI, and it would be my new process. As an exported function, that wouldn't have been possible. So by moving into even one-liners in my scripts directory and bin directory, I've killed two birds with one stone. Even though I hate that expression, somebody make a new one. I am no longer, I'm able to share my code much more easily. So now I can do this, give VIC, and you get the script, you get the one-line script. And I can also be sure that it's going to use no matter what when it's used through exec calls from any other program, whether or not it has bash installed. And to me, that's well worth the crazy amount of overhead that you incur by having it be a separate script. There's a lot more runtime. It's almost like, I think it's like 20 or 30 times slower to run an executable script. I mean, obviously you can't detect the difference, right? So, I mean, it's like, it's just there. See how fast that was? Nobody could even tell that there was any amount of difference. But there is, so in fact, I need to make sure it gets the command one. So there we go. You guys know about that, right? So right now I have a problem because I have VIC as a function, but if I want to force it to use the version that is a command, I just put a backslash in front of it, and that negates any aliases or any exported functions like this. So now when I do that, it will use the real one, and I'll prove it to you real quick as kind of a bonus, I guess. So VIC Twitch. And that will actually run using a different method. You get the same results. So the only way to really understand that is like if I run top. So this is htop. And if I want to run the actual top, which is a binary on the system, so there's the top. It's an alias to htop. But if I want to run the actual top on the system, I have to do /top, and then that will run the actual top that resolves to user bin top. So that's an important little hint tip that I showed everybody. I actually learned that on the stream from somebody several months ago, so I like to repeat it. It's not common. It is covered in the bash manual, but I don't remember seeing it. Oh, well, there I am. Anyway, let's go back to where we were. I can't have any music. SoundCloud girls in the SoundCloud. It's all good. All right. How's it going? All right, we'll keep going here. We're moving kind of slowly through this. Shell check is a thing. Make sure you use it. It's really awesome. All right. Oh, this is a big one. Not command substitution. So command substitution, don't use backticks, of course. That's a pretty no-brainer. Is Twitch experiencing issues, or am I still streaming? Yeah, I apparently I'm really lagging, but am I lagging? It sounds like I'm not lagging, but Anyway, okay. So, am I fine? Thanks, guys. All right, so we have the backticks. And so this is the big one, man. How far are we? We might have to break this up. I'm not going to break it up though. I want it to be one big long thing, even if it's really long. So we have whether to use single brackets or double brackets, and this is a big deal for me when I came to Bash after POSIX coding, and they basically say use double brackets for everything if you are using Bash, and they make a really strong argument for it. These other ones are, of course, subshells. So the two bracket version of if conditions is always evaluated within Bash. It doesn't ever invoke a subshell. But more importantly, it reduces the errors as no path name expansion or word splitting takes place. Did you see that? No parameter, no path name expansion or word splitting takes place. So all that stuff we were just doing by putting quotes around the variable name when we were echoing so that we could stop it from splitting it up into multiple arguments, that stuff happens if you use single brackets. If you use double brackets, it's automatically disabled. So that reason alone, which I did not know until today, that reason alone is all the reason in the world to always use double brackets. So double brackets reduces errors because there's no path name expansion or word splitting. All right. It's really, really important. That includes, like, if you think you want to do a glob expansion. This also explains something that I never understood. I would try to do like glob expansion or something like that inside of my double brackets and didn't work. That's why, because it's turned off by default to be safer. And if you can't use a regex, then life is over, right? Actually, that's coming up next. Yeah, I did not either. I didn't until today. Today I learned, and now you guys have learned, that there is no path name expansion or word splitting between double brackets in Bash. That's huge. If you've been a shell scripter, that's a pretty big revelation. The other thing, and actually the reason, yeah, earlier something about FN, yeah. Well, that is just a general. This is, you know what? I think you might be onto something there, Senator, because this advice that I gave you is based on that idea. Now that this, you still need this because if it's empty, if that string is empty, that'll mean you'll get a shell syntax error that says you cannot have brackets empty equals exit. So by putting the quotes around it, it checks whether the empty string matches this. And sometimes you'll see cute shell scripters will put like an X in front of. Have you guys ever seen this? Have you guys ever seen this syntax before? So they'll do. You'll run on if you're around enough, you'll see it eventually. You'll see stuff like this. You'll see if x fn equals equals exit, or actually usually that in that kind of code you almost always see something like that because they're like not into following any of these standards. Yeah, people do this all the time. They'll do an E, they'll do X exit like that. That's just because they don't want to type quotes. It's totally stupid. Yeah, I hate it. I hate it. People do this all the time, though. I find this all the time in shell scripts. So it's like, and the reason for that is because they should have done this instead, and they would have been fine. It's easier. It's more explicit. Everything. Just think they're being cute. Ryan Dahl, creator of Node, during his talk, 10 things that he hates about Node, actually says, yeah, they do it all the time, and he actually says, all those things you think are cute, don't do them. You'll regret them every time. So that's one of the cute things that I have seen all over the place in production code. I've even seen that in production code. So I'm just remembering some days at IBM. I'm like, really? All right. So I really want to get through this before I have to go to work, like the other work. Matching with shell scripting. Improves matching with shell scripting. Yes, me too. Modifying a string to prevent expansion, compare against a string that isn't where you're matching against. Yeah. I don't even get me started. So, all right. So here we go. So I'm all about the double quotes now. This is, this explains something else to me that I never understood that really confused me as a shell scripter. So put your ears on if you are like me and you were a POSIX guy. It always freaked me the F out to type regular expressions in without quoting. Okay, including variables. All right, so you can actually nest a variable inside of your regular expression here without putting any quotes around that, and that made me so uncomfortable. Every time I did that, I was like, oh man, this is going to get expanded. It's going to do all kinds of damage and chaos to my condition state, to my regular expression match. And I understand it now after reading this. Thank you, Google. I understand why it's okay, because there is no expansion happening at all. It's literally replacing the exact lines that are there. So if you were to put a variable in here, it would, if there was space in it, it would have a space in it, and that's bad, right? I mean, because it wouldn't match a space. It would break it up. You'd have to make sure to do that a different way, or you'd have to escape it out or something. My point is that when you're doing regular expression matching within Bash, which is pretty damn close to Perl or PCRE, but it's not. It's different. That you never put quotes around it. And I cannot tell you how many times I put quotes around a regular expression and had it not match, and I was like ripping my hair out going, what is going on here? And it turns out that you never ever put quotes around a regular expression match. As long as you have this operator right here, and as long as you're using the double backtick, which you have to if you're doing this, then you're safe. You're safe from any kind of shell expansion. The variable will appear as is and be replaced at that point. And obviously you got to make sure you quote out your name here. That's stupid. It would obviously not be file name. It'd probably be a variable there, but you see my point. So that's good news. That's good news on the regex front. And so I found this kind of interesting. This does not match the exact pattern file name fsplat. So I thought that was curious too, right? So, RHS, which one? Let's see. Note that the RHS right hand should not be quoted here. Oh, this side right here. Yeah, the right hand side. So they're saying, so that they're basically just in one line saying what I said in like a paragraph. Don't put quotes around your regex ever. Okay. So this actually apparently this matches the exact pattern F star. It does not expand at all. And it looks like it never will. So yeah. Yeah. So with that FN, even if FN is empty and not just saying, are you using it on Z shell? No, you have to do FN. You have to make FN so it's not defined. Even if FN is not set. Well, that's good news if that's true. In a bash script here, let me try. That's actually really good news if that's true. I hope what you're saying is true, because I've often wanted that, but I don't think it's safe. Of course, the Google says to quote all variables. The end. I'm going to stick with that because I want to find the variables. But even if I wanted to do that outside of that, I would try that. So let's do this. FN equals. Actually, let's do no FN. Let's do FN equals exit and echo yay. Yeah. So that would be no error. I wonder what it does with single quotes. Yep, there you go. So there you go. It looks like that's interesting. I just found something out. Today I learned that the practical reason to comment out the left-hand side is that, and then it's a POSIX thing. So that's leftover POSIX thinking. Interesting. That's super good news. Now, I'm not going to do that, but it's really good to know that I'm safe if I do, because that's a fatal error in POSIX. You see this? You have to do that. And again, here's the dumbass way of doing it, which I see people do all the time. Yeah. So, there you go. So I'm still going to quote my variables no matter what, because I want to be able to find them. You know what? This that seems like overkill to me. Maybe I won't be a real strict stickler with that particular Google thing, because that's like such a waste of time to write. And now that I know that I can do this, now you've ruined me. Standard error, you've ruined me, because now I can do this and no, it'll be fine, even if it doesn't match. Urinary operator, as they're expecting a single variable. They're looking for this guy. So it's pretty complicated, Slayer, but the truth is that this in Bash, I mean in Shell, is a command. It's a urinary. Actually, this is a urinary operator. Sorry, this is a urinary operator. What am I talking about? Well, because var could be dash something. Maybe so. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, that might be too. I don't know. I would like to find a legitimate reason to use. I've seen X used from situations that were not that. This is a urinary operator, and it's just saying, hey, you have to have something over here. And because there's nothing there, because the $FN is expanding to empty, that means it sees this, it sees a bunch of empty, and then it sees a urinary operator, and it's complaining is because you don't have a left side. And this here, by the way, see this right here? This is really cool. Check this out. It's a command. A lot of people don't know that. So in POSIX shell, so yeah, yeah. Well, maybe there's a legitimate reason to use X that I don't know, that I need to learn still. There's still, as you've seen today, there's lots of things that I don't know. I've been doing this for a long time. So, but this is interesting. So this error that's being generated from Bash here, it's being generated because this command is being called, and this command is printing an error. It's not part of Bash. It's printing an error saying, hey, this equal sign is screwing up, because this here, seriously, it's got a man page and everything. I kid you not. There it is. Look at this. Test. Check the file. So a left bracket by itself is an alias, is another word for the test. And so this thing here is just an argument. It just needs this last argument over there somewhere. So that's always, people always freak out when they see that, because that doesn't make any sense to somebody who learned to code in Python or JavaScript as their first language. They're like, wait a second, you mean I'm running a program? Yeah, everything's a program. Even the left bracket is a program in Shell. Yeah. You have that man page. Just do man test. Same one. Man test. We'll do the same thing. All right. So, is it notation for array manipulation? You already mentioned about brackets. Yes, it is. But it's for everything. It's not just for that. The curly bracket variable notation is used everywhere for everything, parameter expansion and everything in between. And I'm going to have a hard time. It's been taking me a long time. This is about a 2-hour segment. I didn't intend it to take this long, but it's been very interesting. So yeah, let's go back. So this has been really useful on here. Yeah. And so here we go. This gives too many arguments here. As if it is expanded to the content of the current directory. So I'm going to say this. I ain't never using single brackets ever again. The safety that is afforded to you with the double bracket should make everybody seriously question using single brackets ever again. Not just the subshell. That used to be the main reason I would cite for performance, but there are so many more advantages if you're coding in Bash. So unless you can get away with writing a dash script and you have it's relatively simple and you don't need Bash, then I really am sold on the double bracket. And thank you, Google, for kind of clarifying all of that for you. And that's why people are asking, what alternative do we have to this dumb book I threw under the bus? This is it. This is a professional coding guideline that's set forth for a whole company that does this stuff all the time, not a PhD who's, So anyway, do this. Testing strings equals some string. I think that's pretty much a given. Run the commands within a single bracket. I don't know. No, I think you're missing it. Hey, Aaron, how's it going? I'm trying to finish all the rest of this. I have like 40% left, so I'm going to go fast. Dash Z0 length strings and dash n string are not zero are preferred over testing for an empty string. Yes, because that's what I do. Are preferred over testing for an empty string. I do this all the time. Thank you, Google, for validating me. I had a lot of things I didn't do, and I had to add to my thing. Hey, Andrew. So here we go. If dash z, so I do dash z and dash n constantly, but I'm more of a dash z guy. I mean, it's pretty much the only test condition I know besides like dash e to see if a file exists. And if you don't know what I mean, you will someday. So dash z is like so easy to just put in your head and just say, if this is there, then this, right? This is okay, blah, 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 equals blah, ensure quotes are empty, but not preferred. I would much rather do this. This is, no, can't read it. This is like, is it empty or not? Okay. Yeah. Do you do dash Z and then a regex test? I don't. I just do the regex test personally. That's me usually. If I need a regex, if there might be an advantage to do that, but I don't know it. Okay, here we go. Not this. There you go. Not this. This equals this, right? Just no. Just no. No to this. Hell to the no on this. All right, so here we go. See if I can get through this. Wait. I'm kind of like cut off. I need to sit up taller or something. Anyway, maybe I need to lower my. I think my monitor is going up slowly, or maybe I'm just slouching. Okay, here we go. Robception again. I know. Here it is. Robception. I'm like sweating too. All right. I want to get through this. It's like we're almost through it, but it's been good, right? I mean, it's been good. I really consider this useful. So dash n, dash z or dash n, these are the two that I use. I use dash n and dash z all the time. I am so happy that they agreed with me on that. I was scripting in a shell. I don't use Python. Yeah. Well, it's always better to program something in the language that you know versus a language you don't know. I mean, I'll give you that even for Python. Even if I wouldn't pick that for 90% of what I do on the shell. Instead of this, okay, so instead of this, it's a big no. I would never do that. Style guide is great. I really like it. For clarity, yeah, so this means equal to. This is another reason I don't like single. So this is the only place in all of coding that I know of, I think Fortran does it too, but I'm not sure, where a single equal sign means is equal to. And I make a big deal when I teach beginners about using double equal sign to test for quality and using a single equal sign as what I call the assignment operator. It's not what I call, it's what it is. And when I tell people, I was teaching a summer camp in 2014 for game developers, and I skipped this part and it screwed them up. Every time they'd never coded before, and every time they saw the equal sign, they thought it was testing for equality. And I was like, no, that's not what it is. It's assigning. It's putting the right-hand side into the left-hand side. Like, oh, so, but the one exception to that is that shell single brackets use equal sign to test for equality versus this. So yet another reason to use double brackets, because they very clearly help you know what you're testing for. Anyway, we are going to get down to using double parentheses, which I'm going to start using a lot more. Does BASIC do that too? Didn't know. Okay, so 100% transparent with the words. I know Linux has it. This just full screen. This is just Alacrity. I'm just using Alacrity, guys, and I'm just in full screen mode. That's all that's going on. Nothing fancy. All right, so let's go down here some more. So again, you can still do greater than 3, but I don't know why you would. Oh wait, this is the one that I actually thought I understood, and it's one of the few times when I think I misunderstood one of the core functions. So, because let's face it, double brackets are not POSIX, and I was coding POSIX most of my life. So this is what you want. Anytime you want to do any value comparison, you want to use double parentheses. And I do not do that. I have never done that. This is fine. That will work too. But this is much better. And so I'm going to start doing that a lot more. So yeah. Yeah, Alacrity. Oh, I love Alacrity. And so instead of this, so this is not a thing. I just don't ever want to do that. Particularly this, right? So it's just disgusting. I don't want to look at it. Anyway, and this is another probably unintentional. So this is what I actually think I have done a lot of. I'm ashamed to say I've probably done a lot of this. This does an unintentional lexicographical comparison, which means that it doesn't check to see if the number is greater. This is such an insidiously dangerous thing, and I absolutely promise you I have some of it in my code somewhere. What this does is it says so this will actually check the letter A versus a 3, and what would A be? It will check to see if A is greater in ASCII value in the ASCII table set than 3. So would it sort lexicographically? And so you'll get truths that should not have been true in a way that is a logic error that's so completely hard to identify. True for false, false for 22, true for 4. Vim container is learning Bash on a MacBook recommended? No, I would get a Linux VM or a Docker container. So I cannot tell you how bad my understanding of that has been in the past, and I feel like I have never been really to tell you the truth, I've been so scared of getting this wrong that I've been doing a lot of that stuff in like using BC or other things that have been unnecessary. And the answer to that is to use parentheses, the double parentheses operator for the win for things that have numbers in them. Not only that, but that lets you do, it's the same syntax for for loops. So when you want to do, for x equals 1, x greater than 10, x plus plus, that kind of syntax is always going to use the double parentheses. Yes, the double parentheses checks that the argument is numeric, and it checks for the comparison to make it numeric, and it allows you to drop the $sign. So you don't even need the $sign when you're doing your variable comparisons. That is huge, and I'm so glad I read that before I went forward with the beginner boost, because I would have taught that incorrectly. I would have tried to teach some form of this. And again, that's one of the reasons I'm doing all of this review, because I've only got about a year of experience doing solid Bash coding versus POSIX. And there's a number of really important exceptions to this. And this is why I absolutely don't want to muddy my mind with Z Shell, because I want to learn Bash properly and then understand how come Bash is different than Z Shell in some significant ways, including floor division. So anyway, let's go back into wildcard expansions and the file names. So here we have, okay. So yeah, this is a really good tip just in general. Always put / in front of everything. If you put / in front of everything, you'll automatically win. And there's at least 2 levels of over the wire, the hacking game, that you'll pass immediately if you do this. Okay. If you don't put $, and this is always a terrifying thing, if you don't put / in front of them, and you do a remove -v, who knows what you just removed, right? So I want to stress something here. Okay. 2 weeks ago, somebody actually forgot to put the dot in front of their / because they were typing fast. You know what happened next. All right. If nobody can come running to me later, so you said put the / I removed my whole directory, my whole root file system. I didn't say put / I said put /. If you cannot reliably type /, I don't know, maybe you're one of these Z shell people who needs, your shell to make up for all your spelling mistakes and your inability to type actual path names. If that's you, then maybe you don't want to use /. Okay. So, yeah, yes, accidentally we're setting, ooh, yes, ouch. Yeah. If you're one of those coffee people who shakes. Well, yeah, you just never know. Just be careful. They're both scary. With the / or without the /, they're both scary. Just be careful. All right. So as opposed to this, and that's, I agree with that, but I won't lie. I've missed the dot before. Okay. So I'm not perfect. I've missed the dot before. No remove root. Is that a thing? Is that a thing, Aaron? Maybe I need to VIP you just for teaching me something today. Is it? It's probably a Bash ish thing. Or is that something you just added? You're talking about no clubber? And I confuse this to remember where to place the semicolons. Yeah. Yep. I don't see interactive force prompt for removal. That's actually probably what I should do. Prompt. It's no preserve. Oh, sorry. No, I mean, that's worth putting there no matter what. Excuse me. Do not remove blood. Default. Oh, that's the default. That's new. I didn't notice that. I don't want to test it right now. You'd have to turn it off. It sounds like do not treat blah specifically. It says the preserver is the default. Yeah, I've never seen it before, but I imagine it was added because of all the reasons we just talked about. Interesting. Yeah, let's go. All right, we still got some more here. Eval, you guys know about eval. Eval is the devil. Never ever do eval. There's only one case where eval makes sense to me, and that is if a script, if a program like Pandoc sends you a shell script through a command to be embedded and included in your bash RC to provide bash completion. That's one of the few cases where doing an eval actually makes sense. It's a very controlled environment. Yeah. And so that's one of the cases where I will use it without worrying. But other than that, no. I'm not trying it. I just don't want to test it right now. I tell you what, I'll do a VM later and we'll test it that way. Eval should be avoided. Blah, blah. We just said that. Arrays. So arrays are cool. Declare-A. I don't need to talk about that. An array is assigned by using parentheses can be appended to with this. This is a hard syntax for me to remember, but I've been, because it's a bash syntax. I told you I'm pretty new to bash. But I've been doing that a lot. Really, really love it. Well, it definitely wasn't there when I destroyed my system like 10 years ago. I have done an rm-rf/ before on accident. I was like, what's going on? My system's acting weird. It's like, it doesn't kill it right away, which is always funny. Like slowly like chews away at it. Yeah, there's arrays for sure. Yep. We're not going to get into arrays here. This is just going through the guidelines. I'm assuming you know bash a little bit. Don't use strings for sequences. And I agree with this. This won't work as intended. So yeah, I agree to use arrays. This is something I'm going to start doing more, start using more arrays for that kind of thing. Yeah, that was me. So sorry for the lag, guys. This has been a pretty long stream. All right. So declare a files ls. Yes. So you can list all the files and then make it into an array. And then you can, this is beautiful. I mean, seriously, I don't do that nearly enough. That is such a great idea. That declares files as an array, forced to be an array. You don't need a declare-a on there. Just the parentheses would have done it. However, that's just like nice and pretty. It runs it and then it sends it all in there. And then, yeah, I love it. Using arrays, there are some negatives. It says using arrays leads to misguided attempts to nest quoting inside a string. Not using arrays can have quoted nested in a string, which is a bad idea, right? Because you'd be depending on white space as opposed to an array. It makes it more Python-like, right, Aaron? To actually use an array instead of a bunch of white space parsing. Arrays make it possible to safely store sequences, blah, blah, blah. It can grow to script complexity. Not that much. Array decisions. Here's what somebody was talking about. Here's how you refer to an array, by the way. So anytime you're going to refer to an array, you need that. If you don't know this already, if you put a $sign in front of the a, it'll tell you the number of elements in the array. Yeah, please don't do that at home, kids. So pipes to while. I am so happy. I made a whole stupid page about this. I'm sorry. Advice, don't page. That's my new politically correct way to say it. Don't do this. Somebody actually recommended this on one of my streams. Frank, is he here? I'm not going to shame him, but he actually recommended something about catting some stuff through a while array. And in this guide from Google, we read very clearly why that's a horrible idea and you should never do it. It's an anti-pattern. The reason it's an anti-pattern is because this invokes a subshell, which therefore localizes all the variables and environment to that. So any variables that haven't been exported in your script are no longer visible to your while loop. If you don't know what that means, replay it a couple times and figure it out. It's really important that you not do that ever. There's no reason to ever do anything piped into a while loop. And they give you the alternative here. So while readline do this, it still invokes a subshell, but the difference is the subshell doesn't blind you. It doesn't make all of these internal variables now part of the subshell and hidden from the process. So because a while loop is not subshelled, the sub command is subshelled, but the rest of this is currently in your same environment for your running script. It doesn't need exported variables or any of that stuff. Okay, that is super important. Make sure you read that part. Alternatively, use read array. This is another common way to do this. If you use read array, you can like take every single line and turn it into an array, and then just loop through the array. I think that's a little heavier on memory. I'm not sure, but I don't tend to do that. But you can definitely do that. This still has a subshell, so my preferred way to do it is this way, right here. This way right here. Another reason for this too is you can actually you can have a command here. You can pass a file in that way. You can actually even do this with a string. So if you use 1, 2, 3 less than signs, the thing that's in here is just a string. You can just make it a string, and it'll iterate over your string as if it was coming from a file line by line or coming from a command line by line. So you can actually loop over strings by line using this method. And so this is pretty much idiomatic best practice for shell, for bash anyway. Don't know how much of that is available in Z shell. You'd have to go look. Arithmetic, of course, arithmetic always goes in double parentheses. I didn't even know you could do arithmetic this way, and I never have done it, nor will I ever. This is really weird. So this doesn't perform numerical comparisons. So greater than, less than is part of that problem we talked about before. They do lexical comparison, not numerical comparison, which is really dangerous. Yeah, Pineapple, you're with me on that. A shell script that installs the distro package, the check connection uninstall package. Yeah. Set an array of all my packages, loop through the array to check already installed. Yeah, I think that's array's fine. And then concentrate on uninstalled packages. Yeah, I think that's fine. I think that's fine, Slayer. So let's go here. We got parentheses. We have a set, for example, set. I've never used set dash e. It executes if something does something weird. Let's see here. It is recommended to avoid blah, blah, as a standalone statement and otherwise be wary of its expression evaluating to 0. Okay. I guess I understand that now. Yeah, I've never done that. Some people do though. I've seen people do this as its own line. Problem is that counts as a statement. And I've never done that. I've always put it into a variable or something else. So I can't really see a case where I would do that. Yeah, this form is not portable and deprecated. So don't do that. I didn't know you could do it. Thank God. Glad Bash documents things unlike Windows. Despite appearances, let. Oh, don't use let, guys. Let is dead. Use let in JavaScript. Save let for your JavaScript. Don't use it here. Ever. So use I equals expression. This is bashisms that are old and unnecessary. Don't. It's not a built-in. Don't do it. This Stack Exchange is full of recommendations to do this shit right here. I kid you not. It's like it's full of it, and I'm like, you guys, just know. Stylistic considerations aside, the shell's built-in arithmetic is many times faster. Yes. Using vars, use this, which we already talked about. Now this is something that is really cool. I'm running out of time. It's kind of going fast here. We're getting close though. So I'm just going to summarize it really quickly for you. There are 3 ways to declare a variable. You can do it without the local or declare or the type def, which nobody uses anymore. Prefixes. And there's one more. There's one more called read only. So when you're declaring a variable in Bash, there's 3 things you can put in front of it which you should pretty much always put in front of it according to them. And I've done this for a while too. Declare, which is the one I've been using too much. I'm going to tell you why I'm going to start using local. Local, which are functionally equivalent. And we're going to talk about that in a second. And there's one called read only. Read only is exactly the same as declare -r. And of course, you can do it without, POSIX way and not do any of that and just do something equals something. If you do that, it becomes a global variable automatically. Everything is a global variable in POSIX. One of the reasons you're using bash and not POSIX is because you don't want to have every variable be a global. There is no such thing as variable scoping in any POSIX compliant shell. There's not. So if you want localized variable scoping, if you don't know what that means, something else we got to learn here. So localized variable scoping, thanks, Aaron, means you must declare with one of the declare keywords I just mentioned. Declare, local, read only, and that's it. Okay. Now, why would you use those? Now, when I first went into this, and I found this out today, when I first went into this, I actually read the man page on it, and I was trying to decide whether I should use local or declare. Local is an old school one that came about using K shell and all of the other shells that came after bash. Okay. And so local has been around for a long time, and you'll see it in a lot of code, a lot of K shell code, a lot of bash code. You won't see declare as much, frankly. At least I hadn't. So I was trying to determine the equivalent between declare and local. It turns out, and I redid this today. So up until today, I was using declare everywhere because it was more explicit. I just liked it. And also up until today, I thought that to get an associative array, which if you guys don't know what that is, you're going to have to look it up. Associative arrays are maps, key value pairs, right? And to get them, you have to do declare -capital A. And that up until today, I thought was the only way to do that. And so a declare -capital A would give you an associative array. And I'm like, oh man, that's so worth it. And again, up until today, I thought local did not do that. Today I read the words after reading this suggestion that they're going to give you here to use local within localized scope for functions and stuff, and use declare everywhere else that it's a global, which I like. And I'll tell you why in a second. But up until that moment, I thought that I could not declare associative arrays with local. Well, today I read in the bash man page that the local keyword is identical to the declare keyword in that it accepts the same options, which means -a, which means -i for integers, which is what you're seeing here, which means -a for arrays, and -A for associative arrays. So my assumption before today that just using declare for -A was the only way to get associative arrays was wrong. And I found that out today. So that leaves me with the wonderful opportunity to use all three of these keywords in a way that makes all of the code much easier to read, even if all of them could be interchanged. And so I am going to follow Google's advice, which says use local, the keyword local, when inside of functions. And by the way, you can declare functions inside of functions using local. So it's a very Python-esque kind of things to do, or even JavaScript, Node, Dino, whatever. So you can use local from within functions. Use declare for everything else, for all your globals and everything at the top. You use local inside a scope. There you go. Well said. Use local inside a scope, and use declare at the top of your script usually to declare everything else. And it is. That's what I found out today. I thought that local was less than declare up until today, and I reread it again, and I don't know if it's because I'm on a system that has a newer version of bash or not, but as of this moment on my version of bash, local and declare are basically aliases. There's another one called typedef, which nobody uses anymore, which is also another alias. So when you can look up in the man page, you can see those. So what that means, pardon me. So what that means is local identifies localized stuff within a local scope, within a block scope. Thank God we have block scope in bash, right? Don't have that in POSIX. And declare I'm using for things that are outside of the whole thing. And when I'm using a constant rather than having declare -r, I'm going to start using something I never used before. I didn't know about till today, called read only. So read only is an alias is your word, but for declare -r, local can only be used in a function. Interesting. Okay. Well, that makes sense, right? They could have called declare global. They almost could have. And effectively, that's what I'm doing. I'm using declare to declare globals. I'm using local for local variables, and I'm using read-only to identify read-only variables. Something else I found out today that I thought was very fascinating. When you declare, this is the first time I've ever seen this before, and I don't have time to really talk about it, but I'll just give you the short version. When I declared something using read-only or declare -r, it blocks the use of that variable name anywhere else in the code, anywhere else. And that meant including local scope variables. And I didn't believe it when I saw it. I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. But let me show you. Yeah. And because otherwise it would have been exactly the same, right? As all the other stuff. So let me give you a sense. In fact, that was what this code was before I deleted that. So here we go. So if I do this, I do read only something, and then down here I do was another echo some foo echo some. I know I'm not coding this right based on all those things we just talked about. I just want to do it fast. See there? Wait. Where'd it go? Oh, here we go. So there we go. Similar is similar to constant. Yep, it really kind of is. So read only, by the way, is exactly the same as declare -r. Something else I found out today is if you put an X in there, not only will it make it read only, it'll export it rather than having to do the export keyword. I did not know that until today. So lots to learn out there, people. Read only variable. So basically, this argues very strongly for the Google convention and POSIX convention of making your global variables all caps. Because if you do that, then over here I can do local sum and I'm fine. Oops. So there we go. Can you local sum in the function? Yep, that's what I'm saying here. So this is the same as declare as well. I can also declare it like that. This will work as well. Another echo sum. Oh, all caps sum. I mean, that goes without saying. That's going to work great. So that's that's kind of the point there. So there you go. So you got to declare. So for me, I'm going to put local. You know what? Can you do local foo equals bar? Let's confirm this. Somebody just claimed that you cannot do this. True. Wow. Didn't know that. So there you go. So you can't even use local in a global scope. So what that means is use declare for all things global. Make sure you have all caps, which is good because POSIX people will get it. And then use read only for your constants. And that will make you happy. So if you want to make an array, you can make an array. You can make an array like that and you should be fine. All right. See that? So there we go. Very happy stuff. We're almost done with this. I've got to wrap up really quick. So I want to finish this. I need to assign to a read-only variable either. Yeah. Okay. So let's go down here. We have the plus and the minus. We have all the decrement operators, everything. This is really great stuff. All of the mathematical stuff. Please simple, absolutely useless help text. You don't need to even assign a value to the read-only variable. Yeah. Okay. Naming convention, function names. So there's the function names. My single function. If you're writing a single function, use lowercase. What? I thought I saw a function keyword up there. Braces must be inlined. I didn't know you could even make a package. People, I'm kind of embarrassed. The function name is without a Google, no space between the function name and parentheses. Today I learned that you can make packages. I tell you, we all have so much to learn. You never know it all, man. I mean, I thought I knew Bash. There's like so many things that I did not even know. This is why my comprehensive Bash course, when I eventually make it, is going to be go through the man page. Like literally, I did not know you can do packages. Yeah. So packages just allow you to put them all together. The function keywords is extraneous when plus present from the function name, but enhances quick identification of functions. Bull crap. I don't agree with that. Yes, it does, but I do not use the function keyword. Why? The number reason I do is because that's a change that K-Shell made from POSIX born that doesn't need to be made. I don't buy it. I can find functions just as fast by looking for keywords at the beginning of a. In fact, I have a script that does this. That functions keywords at the beginning of a line that have a space and then parentheses. Boom. Got your functions right there. I don't need to look for the stupid function keyword because they're not even functions. They're subroutines and they're procedures 90% of the time, which really triggers me. All right, so for zone, there you go. Variable names, we got that down. There's nothing new. There's the read only versus see. Here's the constant and the environment variable I was telling you about right there. Isn't that cool? Today I learned that. Yeah. Also, section code review where I use Python to generate my PS1. And the best solution is best top answer again. Yeah, I would never use Python for my PS1 generation. That's a subshell invocation for a PS1. Do you put a prompt command too, Aaron? Please tell me no. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, I hate that they're starting to use fn and func too. They don't need to. They're not functions. It's just give us our sub or our def or whatever, so we can at least pretend like they're procedures and subroutines. Verbose equals false. While get opt. Blah blah blah. All right, we're about done here. Thank God, because I have a class to teach. That's completely inaccurate statement. I have a private mentored session to attend. CP, by the way. Oh, well, I'm glad you found some stuff there. We're trying to get back to it. Read-only variables. We just talked about read-only variables. I don't need to do that anymore. Local variables. So here's the thing about using a local variable. I'm like, Google, that makes good sense. Okay, I'll do that because now I can search for local and then isolate my variables to all the stuff that are within functions. If I had a declare keyword within my functions, which is totally possible, I could not search quickly through my script to find all the local variable names. So let's say I have a local variable name and I have a global, or which you can't do if it's a read-only. You see what I'm saying? I can find variables that are inside of functions much faster this way by using both declare and local instead of forcing everything to just be declare. Oh my gosh, that's so great. You guys, I hope you get your OSCP and you can make me jealous again. I need to go get mine. So here we go. Local, my variable, my function. We talked about that. Function location. Okay, so this is actually something I didn't know. So when you're using command substitution, I got flagged for this when I did my shell check. You need to declare your variables separate from this line because it stomps on your dollar, on your special dollar question mark variable, which gives you your last return value. This is not a good thing. Yeah. So yeah, function location. This is cool too. This is a convention I'm going to start following. If you have more than a couple functions, they suggest creating a main function. Duh. So you can find it fast in the code. That goes, exorcism.io does that too for all its bash stuff. And I agree. That's a great idea. It's kind of Python-y, but let's face it, every single language out there has a main, thing. It's just either implied, or you can, make it explicit and then call it at the end. So I plan to do that as well. Checking for return values. We have that. Exit one for return values. Another thing about doing that is it allows you to use function syntax within your main thing, so you don't have to deal with like exit 0 versus return 0. Anybody ever had that problem? So you're trying to decide whether I want it. So you write code as a script and then you try to make it into a function. You should always write a function first and then call the function from the script. The reason for that is because when you're going to cut and paste that function out someplace else, all those exit 1 or exit 0s are going to have to be changed to return 1 and return 0s. So if you just write it as a function first and then call the function at the end and pass all the arguments, you're good to go, which follows the same, kind of justification they're making for using the main function. Because even if your main function has return values at the end, then that main function could be cut and paste someplace else and you're just invoking the thing and you don't give a crap about exit. And then you can do an exec on that, and then it will actually return the return value as well. So many freaking caveats for shell. It's because of the way that it's come about. And a lot of Python people don't like it for that reason. There are caveats for Python too, so don't let anybody tell you that Python's easier than shell to code. I've seen Python code that makes this shell code look simple. It's all about the coder mostly. So here we go. Checking return values. There we go. Make sure we use the parentheses because we're checking numbers and not lexical comparisons. These are, by the way, that is totally a problem in Python as well. Go has a GIL too. I was just doing a thing on that the other day. GILs are not necessarily evil, but built-in commands versus external commands. This is kind of a thing. In conclusion, just be consistent. This is the end. I'm gonna have to take off pretty abruptly. Does anybody have somebody for me to raid? Otherwise, I'm just gonna go ahead and close it down. It's been really fun. Thank you for going through the style guide with me. If you didn't learn some shell along the way, hopefully you can go back and learn shell on your own. But I really appreciate that list of guidelines from Google. So thanks, Google. It's one of those things that you have to accept with the good with the bad. There's a lot of good technical stuff coming out of Google. There's a lot of bad as well. But yeah, aquarium for 12 hours. Let's go. You dare me to?